Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, we're ready to start the meeting.
Yes, sir.
I don't know. I only saw the two.
The time is 6:34 p.m. and the Louisville Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of February 2nd, 2016 is now called to order, and we do have a quorum present. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the January 19th, 2016 meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, may I have a motion to approve as presented?
Motion to approve?
Motion by Mary Ellen,
Second.
seconded by Brandon. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 3 is public hearing for consent agenda plats. It's the final plat of Hebron 121 Edition, Phase 3, Lot 3R, Block B, Lot 1R, Block E. It's containing 6.256 acres. It is zone mixed use 90, MU 90, and is located on the south side of Lakeside Circle, west of the DGNO Railroad, being a replat of Hebron 121 Edition, Phase 3, Lot 3, Block B, Lot 1, Block E. Richard?
Chairman Davis, the plat before you tonight on the public hearing consent agenda complies with all minimum standards of the General Development Ordinance and the Zoning Ordinance. Staff recommends approval as submitted. Thank you.
Commissioners, questions? No. Okay, if not, at this time, we'll open up the public hearing. Anyone that wishes to speak on this subject, please come forward, sign in, and state your name. All right, having no one come forward, the public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, comments? Anything? If not, entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Moved to approve by Brandon. Seconded by Kristen. Those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Yeah, okay. Motion carries unanimously. Sorry. Okay. Item number 4A is public hearing, zoning, and special use permits. This is consideration of a zone change request from general business, GB, to Old Town Center Business District, OTC, on an approximately 0.75 acre tract of land. It is out of the J.W. King Survey. It's abstract number 696. It's located at the northwest corner of East Main Street and Keeley Avenue. It's requested by James Murray of Hard Sun 100 LLC. He is the property owner, and the case number is PZ 2016-0203.
Chairman Davis, members of the commission, the item before you tonight was a property that was home to the Louisville Feed Mill, a family-owned and operated business for 124 years, beginning in 1886 through 2010. This property was sold by the Polser family this past November of 2015 to Mr. James Murray. He is a restaurant owner and part of the Hard Sun 100 LLC. He plans to convert the existing structures into a restaurant on the property. His aim is to preserve as much of the historical character on the property as possible. Owner's currently cleaning and repairing the various buildings on the property, and this is kind of the first step of the development process, changing the zoning. It is currently zoned a general business, and the Old Town Center Business District zoning district will give him a little bit more flexibility as he redevelops his property. He has also submitted a final plat that is currently under staff review, and he will have to submit his final design for the property to the Old Town Design Review Committee for approval of the overall design, the exterior materials, and colors. In addition to that, he will also have to submit an Old Town development plan for staff review, and of course that will have to meet all the minimum standards of the Old Town Development Ordinance. As you can see, this site has several tracts of land, and the platting will bring that all into one. And again, this zoning designation does comply with the overall Old Town Master Plan. The The proposed zoning, Old Town Center Business District, does allow restaurant uses, and it does provide flexibility with setbacks in the overall development of the property. The proposed modifications proposed on this property to the historic structures do comply with all of our ordinances and long-range plans for Old Town. The proposed adaptive reuse of the property and rezoning will enhance the historic character of Old Town, and staff recommends that the P&Z recommend approval of the zoning change request from general business to Old Town Center District zoning as requested. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions. If not, I don't believe the owner is here, but this is a pretty straightforward request. So again, staff is available for any question that you might have.
I just had one, maybe two. Parking, is there any plans for parking other than the
Yes.
city lots?
Well, they're planning to provide some off-street parking, and they may even add some angled parking off of Keeley Street. The city is working on a streetscape project along Main Street that will add additional parallel parking with wider sidewalks, be more pedestrian and bicycle linkage between the core of Old Town to the train station. So this property will benefit from that project that is in the design process currently.
Okay, my second question, seating capacity, and does it include outdoor?
There will be some outdoor seating, and again, they'll have to outline all of that in their Old Town development plan, and that'll be staff approved if it meets all the minimum standards. But keep in mind, the Old Town district does have basically some relaxed standards, especially on parking because of the concept of shared parking and the proximity of the city lots. Because there is a city lot about half a block to the south, another one about a block to the west, and then you've got all of the parking here surrounding City Hall, about a block and a half to the northwest of the site.
Commissioners, questions? Okay, thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we'll open up the public hearing. Anyone that wishes to speak on this subject, please come forward, sign in, and state your name. All right, having no one come forward, the public hearing is now closed. Comments? Okay.
Go ahead.
Make a motion, Kristen.
I feel the same way. I'd like to second it.
Okay. Motion by Kristen, seconded by Mary Ellen. Those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion unanimous, carries. Okay, item 4.
Mr. Chairman, this
Yes, sir.
item will be considered by the City Council in a public hearing on Monday, February the 15th at 7:00 p.m. for a final decision.
Thank you. Okay, on to 4B. Consideration of a special use permit, SUP, for minor automobile services consisting of a freestanding Goodyear Auto Care facility on an approximately 1.212 acre lot legally described as Lot 1, Block G, Carrington Village Edition Phase 2. It's located on the northwest corner of Farm to Market 3040 and State Highway 121 Business, as requested by Steve Meyer of Hummel Investments, LLC, on behalf of Drexel Realty Louisville, LP, the property owner. The case number is SUP 2016-0201. Richard?
Chairman and Commissioners, this item is on a subject property that is currently vacant. It was platted as part of the Carrington Village residential development to the north, as you can see on this aerial photograph. And currently, Goodyear is operating out of the end cap of the shopping center, which is just immediately west of the subject site, right here. And their bays are on the side of the building facing east towards Business 121. The business has outgrown that facility and are seeking to expand in the area. And the proposal, as you can see here, is for a 7,800 square foot building with 12 bays, 6 on each side. The applicant originally, in their first submittal, had the building oriented 90 degrees where the bays faced north and south, south to FM 3040 and north towards the Carrington Village neighborhood to the north. And staff recommended that the building be rotated to minimize the impact of noise and the visual impact of those service bays. And so therefore, the configuration before you tonight has those bays facing east and west. I also have an image of what the elevations will look like. It's a brick and stone building with a standing seam metal roof that is blue in color. This is the elevation right here. They'll be facing FM 3040. It mostly consists of windows. The two upper elevations are the east and west elevations, and then the lower left is the rear elevation facing Carrington Village. With that, I will put the site plan back on. They provided pretty heavy landscape buffers on all 4 sides of the site. Particular attention was paid to the property boundary at the north. There is an existing masonry screening wall that was constructed by Carrington Village. The applicant is providing a minimum 15-foot landscape buffer and providing live oak trees, which are evergreen. So as they reach maturity, they'll provide a visual buffer and a sound buffer as well. That'll be higher than what the fence is there to screen the view of the development and also helps with noise as well. Staff has received 2 phone calls expressing concerns about noise on the facility, and then we received 3 written letters of opposition concerned primarily over noise and so forth. I believe several of the neighbors may be here tonight to speak. We had passed around a copy of the letters that were received. Also want to mention too, staff did request information from the police department on calls to this location. I believe there were 2 in the past year, 2 noise complaints. I believe one was on October the 19th for noise, and we had passed this on to the applicant, so I believe when the applicant comes forward for their presentation, they will give you a little bit more detail on that. Another concern that staff has on this request is the fact that the existing facility is set up for an automotive repair, and it's highly likely that another automotive repair business will locate in that. So if this SUP is approved, we will have 2 automotive repair businesses next door to each other. Do keep in mind that the existing site is zoned local commercial, and that zoning district does not allow any type of outside storage. The general business district does allow some outside storage, but staff is recommending 2 conditions if this SUP is approved. The first condition is that outside storage of vehicles on the site shall not be allowed, and the second condition is that the hours of operation be limited to 7:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday, and closed on Sunday. So that would be a zoning violation if they operated outside of those hours. Addressing the noise issues, noise is addressed in our nuisance ordinance, and that is enforced by the police department. So we always encourage any residents who are disturbed by any noise from any business anywhere in the city that they contact the police, and that is enforced by the police. So with that, staff is basically taking a neutral stance on this issue. There are kind of pros and cons, so staff is forwarding this request to the P&Z for your consideration. A few other little items I did want to mention. As far as signage, the applicant is not proposing a pole sign. They've made a commitment to only provide a monument sign with an electronic reader board, which would have to be a maximum of 6 feet in height. They also are showing very limited signage on the face of the building. I believe one sign will be facing 3040, and there's a Goodyear sign on the two sides of the building. So I believe it's less signage than what is on the current facility. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions. And as I mentioned earlier, the applicant is present tonight to give a little bit more detailed presentation and to answer questions. And I believe there are other members of his team that can also address any of your concerns. Thank you.
My first question. Okay. Okay.
I had a couple too.
Yeah. We have a couple
We weren't
questions right here. Mine was the driveway, is that the existing one that is cut into the road now, into 3040?
Yes. They are actually asking for 4 variance requests. One of those is, I can actually cover those, but yeah, as you might can see, there's an existing driveway. That was constructed by TxDOT back in the 90s when FM 3040 was constructed. And that is the only access to this property. TxDOT has control of access on the east side along the Business 121 ramp. And then the property to the west where the current Goodyear is, there is no cross-access easements. So this is the only point of access to this property. And it's probably one reason why this property had remained vacant for so long, because it has very, very limited access. It does line up with a median break. TxDOT did line that up with a median break, so it does have access from both directions. But as far as the 4 infrastructure variances, again, those will be handled by the City Council. But the first one is to waive the is to waive the requirement of a deceleration lane into the site. There is just not physically enough distance to provide the required storage and taper between the 121 off-ramp and the driveway. Again, staff has no objection to that. The second variance is to waive the 250-foot control of access from 121 to the driveway. I believe it's 166 feet. The third one is to waive the 230-foot driveway spacing requirement from an existing driveway, or between existing driveways on separate lots. As you can see, I believe it's 66 feet from the proposed driveway. And like I said, there is an existing driveway cut that was constructed by TxDOT. And then there's the existing driveway into the existing shopping center. And again, that's an existing situation. Our hands are tied. There's really no other solutions to provide a greater spacing. Then the fourth one is to reduce the required 10-foot setback to 5 feet from the existing water line and sanitary sewer easement. There is let me go ahead and switch up the drawings. On the front of this property is a 20-foot sanitary sewer and water line easement. There are currently no water or sewer lines in that easement. It was dedicated as part of the original plat. The actual water main is located out in the TxDOT right-of-way, and then sewer is provided from the rear. So engineering staff has determined that there is identified that there is no need for that easement, and so if this SUP is approved and the applicant moves forward with the development process, they will be submitting a replat to remove that easement. But since it's in place right now, the general development ordinance requires a 10-foot building setback, but the applicant is asking for a 5-foot variance or a reduction in that setback. At this time, that allowed them to provide a wider buffer at the back. I think if they had to abide by the setback, it would have only resulted in a 10-foot landscape buffer adjacent to the neighborhood. So by sliding the building forward, they were able to accomplish a 15-foot setback. And that basically puts the building on the 25-foot building line, which lines the building up with the shopping center to the west. So it does make sense that the building's set at that line, especially since we know that that easement will be abandoned if they proceed with the development process.
And my other question was, is there any particular requirement on how a sign is posted for the meeting sign or the SUP sign?
It just requires that a sign be put up
Okay,
on the property.
okay.
Richard, how many homes are in Carrington Village, approximately?
I'm not sure of the exact number. I want to say it's well over 200.
Okay.
And I believe the HOA, a member, one of the officers from the HOA is present tonight.
Okay.
So I might defer that question, that exact
Okay.
number to that.
Do
to that
we
person.
know the homes who have called in the complaints to law enforcement? Do we know if they are on Carrington Way or if they are further north?
I believe one of the police reports did list one of the residents that live on Carrington Lane that back up to the shopping center.
Okay, I just wondered if it was extending past, I know our letters were from Carrington, but I didn't know if
Yes,
it
all three
went
were from
fur-
Carrington Lane.
Yeah, I didn't know whether it went further north as far as the issue went.
We have not received any comments from any of the residents further in the neighborhood north of Carrington Lane.
If there are, ending up that there are vehicles being stored after this is perhaps passed with that contingency, what is the penalty for that?
That's a zoning violation, since that
Okay.
is a condition of the SUP.
Okay,
And the fine is up to $2,000 a day for a zoning violation.
okay, all right,
That is allowed by ordinance.
thank you, that's all I had.
Any other questions?
Yes, one more question. One of the complaints listed that tires were being stored outside and it created a nuisance with mosquitoes. Will they continue to store tires outside? I saw in one of the pictures, it appears there was some tires in a bin or in an enclosed area, but it was outside. Will they continue to do that? That may be a question for the,
That'd be a good question for the applicant,
Okay.
but generally, no outside storage is allowed.
So that
They're
means-
not
that means tires.
designating any storage locations on the site. They do show a dumpster. Typically, the dumpster is not the most appropriate spot for tires. Generally, those should be kept inside, and I know there are a lot of state regulations that have to be followed as far as removal and recycling of those tires. But generally, the city does not allow, any tires to be stored, particularly in newer sites like this. There's no sites designated, so generally, any type of storage needs to be inside the building.
so that no storage includes, would be tires as well, or?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Because typically, the dumpster that is shown, which is shown kind of in the northwest corner of the site, is typically just for garbage. And those containers typically have a lid on them to keep out mosquitoes and any other rodents that might be attracted to the trash. And again, those are emptied out on a regular basis as well.
I think we have somebody who wants to speak.
We've opened up a public hearing.
Okay.
Yes.
Sure, let's see.
Okay, thank you, Richard. I think what we'd like to do is open up a public hearing now and ask the applicant to come and talk first, and then we'll have the residents after that. So if anyone wishes to speak, please come forward, sign in, and state your name.
My name is Steve Meyer. I'm here tonight representing Louisville Tire and Service. Louisville Tire and Service is a locally owned independent Goodyear dealer. Basically a licensing agreement with Goodyear to have their name on the building in order to sell Goodyear tires. I have with me tonight the owner of that business, Mr. Charles O'Bannon, and the owner of the vacant lot that Mr. O'Bannon is contracting to buy, Mr. Jimmy Grisham. Appreciate the opportunity to present to you guys tonight. I think Richard, did a good job of explaining what we've gone through in the process so far. Mr. Grisham has owned the land since 2009. We've been working with Mr. O'Bannon and Mr. Grisham on this project since early September. As Richard mentioned, the Louisville Tire and Service is currently a tenant in the shopping center next door. They do not own the building. They just are a tenant. The shopping center, it was built approximately 1985. Mr. O'Bannon has been operating in that space for almost 10 years, since October of 2006. They've decided their business has grown. They'd like to invest in the city of Louisville and build a new building that they own and that they completely, control what's going on their property, as opposed to being a tenant in a shopping center. The budget for the project is about $2 million total, so it's a significant investment that they're willing to make. As Richard said, the new facility is about 7,800 square feet. As far as the design, the site design, the building design, we've met all of the city requirements for architectural standards. We're exceeding landscaping standards, as Richard may have mentioned. We had our first pre-app meeting on September the 30th, and like Richard mentioned, we initially, in our first site plan, had the building oriented parallel to 3040, so half the bay doors faced the rear and half faced the front. After submitting our SUP package and Richard and the staff having some time to review it, they called us in and told us they would be in favor of us rotating the building. So we worked with them to rotate the building. That's part of the one variance, getting some relief on the setback from the water line easement that will eventually go away. I think we really came up with a better site plan. There's no bay doors facing the Carrington Village to the rear, none facing the front. We have no parking between the building and the street. There's only landscaping. So in that entire 25 feet of building setback, it's fully landscaped. We've talked about the access. It's the only paved area in our front yard is the driveway crossing the building setback line to get in and out of the site. Like we mentioned, we're exceeding the landscape buffer significantly on the two sides and by 50% on the rear. And then in the front, is that also a 10-foot buffer along 3040? And we're at 25 feet because we're landscaping everything between the property line and the front of the building. And in those buffers, not only are they wider than they need to be, we've exceeded the number of trees and plantings that would normally be required. We paid special attention to the buffer on the back between us and the residential. Not only do we have the trees and the plantings, but we intend to try to berm that up to even elevate that screen, so it's predominantly above the top of the existing wall. We could have a pole sign, but we agreed to go with a monument sign since we understand that's a big intersection. You're kind of very highly visible. So we're happy to do a monument sign there, as he described, with an electronic reader board that meets the code section on that type of sign. Again, the variances, it's 4 variances sounds like a lot, but 3 of them revolve around the drive approach that the site was burdened with by TxDOT. I mean, TxDOT, we called them and met with them, and they said there's no way we will agree to a decel lane being put in there. And there's no control over the spacing between the drive they put in when they redid the interchange and the next drive on the shopping center parcel. So those are really 3 combined into one issue. And then the setback from the utility easement, it will really be a moot point if we go forward and get it approved on the SUP, because engineering wants that water line easement abandoned. We did meet with Mr. John Taylor and Richard Jarrett with the Carrington Village HOA some time ago. Actually, when we met with them, we showed them the original layout where the building was parallel to 3040. I think Mr. Taylor is here tonight. We met with them, showed him what we're doing, gave him all the drawings, answered all their questions. I think they were happy with our level of willingness to have them involved in the process and make any comments that they address any comments that they had. The noise complaints, we obtained the police records too, and the 2 noise complaints that were, I guess, addressed by the police were, I mean, that's that's a shopping center. Mr. O'Bannon doesn't control what goes on in the parking lot at all, much less after hours. And both those complaints weren't related to his business. They were, somebody was parking an RV back behind there every night. Agree, they're a total nuisance, but they weren't a function of the operation of Mr. O'Bannon's business. The hours that Richard mentioned are the hours that they are currently open. So we're not asking for anything that they aren't already doing, but when they're closed, and their people aren't there after hours working on cars or any of that. So the two calls in the last 14 months that we identified were unrelated to Mr. O'Bannon's business, and you know, we have no idea what they were related to. They could have related to another business there, or just somebody pulling off the street to find a place to park. I think Richard pretty much covered everything else. I'm happy to answer any questions. Mr. O'Bannon's here if you've got some operational questions, like the questions about how they deal with tires, which is very highly regulated by the EPA from cradle to grave on where the tires go and who takes them, hauls them off. He can speak in detail to that. We have several options. We could, they're currently storing them in the dumpster enclosure, and they pick them up approximately every 2 weeks. Mr. O'Bannon can elaborate on that. I know there was an issue brought up about mosquito breeding because water gets in the tires, and our response to that or offer would be, well, we can put a roof over that section of the enclosure where the tires are stored so they don't get rained on. You know, I've seen other companies that put them in a dumpster themselves, and in that way they were out of the weather. So there are ways to solve that, I think, that would satisfy the concern of mosquito breeding. That's really my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or we got these other guys here that could answer questions I can.
I had 3 questions.
Okay.
Could you point out where the parking is on both sides, east and west, or
Sure.
like customer parking when you come in, you leave your car for the day?
This plan probably depicts it better. That other plan got a little light. Okay, so the parking is down this side facing 121, and the other parking is on the west side facing the shopping center. So no parking between the front of the building and the street, and no parking between the rear of the building and the rear property line. That is just a drive to accommodate, you know, car traffic and the fire department.
And then the back wall, you said maybe elevated the trees or that area?
Yeah, so the grade changes a little bit of the existing grade of the lot back there.
Goes down,
And
yeah.
I think if we built a berm up in that landscape buffer, and we could get the trees higher so that the tree, you know, the canopy of the tree is about even with the top of the fence, and it really effectively gives you much taller
So the
screening
6-foot
effect.
fence would be 8 or more once the trees develop.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, those live oak trees grow really fast, and they have leaves all year long. They don't drop their leaves in the winter. They're constantly producing leaves.
I know they drop those little acorns.
Yeah.
And my last question is, what's the thinking in not allowing cars to move from the shopping center across the driveway into this property?
You mean cars being worked on?
Continual traffic flow.
I think it would be a traffic hazard because I think people would be shortcutting through there, and that's generally something that
Okay.
doesn't work well from the city streets where they're coming out or for the businesses there.
And then the garbage or the receptacle in the back?
Yes,
It
sir.
has trees and has plenty of shielding?
Yes, so
Okay.
there's 15 feet I believe from the back of the dumpster enclosure to the fence, so from the edge of the paving to the fence is even a greater distance than 15 feet.
Okay.
And that would all be landscaped in excess of what's required.
And today it's against the fence in the existing location? I think.
Yeah, it is right back there. I think it's oriented the other way, and it's used by some other people in the shopping center too, I believe. But it is against the fence, so the new dumpster enclosure would be, you can't really see it very well in that drawing, would be 15 feet away from the property line.
Commissioners, questions?
My question would be for the, I guess, the owner about the hours of operation and
I got a
when.
question.
Go ahead.
I don't think I have something.
Is there gonna be an alley where from the Primus building coming to this building? Is
No,
there gonna be an alley
no,
back there?
no pavement connection between the two sites at all.
So the only way the fire department can get in is from 3040?
That's right. And Tim Ippolito reviewed the plan. We have provided a hammerhead at the end, so when he pulls his truck in, he has the proper spacing to turn around, and he's approved all of that.
Okay.
And it's a fully sprinkled building.
I have two questions. How many parking spaces are you forecasting here on either side?
Oh, you got me there. I can't remember off the top of my head. We're providing 47 spaces.
And how many employees do you guys have?
Mr. O'Bannon, that probably a better question to answer for you.
And most of them will be driving there, obviously, probably.
I would imagine, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So we're in excess of the required parking, I believe.
I have a question as
Yes, ma'am.
well. I've read through some of the complaints, and there are some photos of some pretty badly damaged cars that have been parked there. Is that part of your operation?
It is not. There is a car there, doesn't have a license plate. It looks like it's been stolen and stripped, and it is not part of their operation. Now, there was a car there that was a little boogered up on the front, and I believe that's an employee's car that he drives every day, but they do not leave cars outside at all. They don't leave a customer's car outside, because if something happens to it overnight, then they're responsible. So any car that doesn't go home at the end of the day is put inside the building. So, I think Mr. O'Bannon might have said that they'd contacted the landlord of the property about that, but that car does not belong to them. And they would not, again, that's part of being in a shopping center. You really don't have total control like you would on your own property.
So your current operation, you do not store vehicles outside?
No, correct, Charles?
Okay.
But someone can drop off a car early in the morning or after you close at night? Okay. Commissioners? All right, thank you, sir.
Okay, oops, I need to sign in.
So does anyone else with the applicant wish to speak, or do we have it pretty well covered? So, okay, thank you. Okay, anyone wishing to speak, please come forward, sign in, and state your name.
I'm John Taylor. I'm the president of the Carrington Village HOA. There was a question about the number of houses, and I just wanted to clarify that there are 183 homes in the neighborhood.
Okay, appreciate that.
Any questions?
Commissioners?
Okay.
No?
Terry Ellis,
Thank you, Mr. Tyler.
resident, Carrington Village. I believe you've also got a letter from me. And I'll go ahead and speak, for one, to the police calls, because I made one of them.
Okay.
Jeff Costello made the other. And it was due to an RV that was parked there 24/7 for a month. And they were using generators, they were doing whatever they were doing, but they were working on vehicles after hours, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And then apparently somebody was sleeping in the thing at night as well, because we'd hear the generator, and it would, you know, my wife and I were trained to be tolerant because we didn't have any small children, and we were just biting our tongue, until one day Jeff just exploded, jumped up, said, "Shut that stuff off." And we thought it was ridiculous too, but we didn't want to be the only complainers. And we didn't realize that Jeff was going through the same, you know, scenario. And we're going to have a lot of other neighbors that are going to be doing the same thing once this happens, unless there is, say, a 10-foot buffer wall between, you know, the community and the new proposed pretty building that you guys have put together. One of our other concerns is definitely, you know, the tire storage, which he addressed. And I don't see a problem with that as long as it's all covered and there's no way that water's going to get into it. But emissions is what's a big concern as well. You know, we're taking emissions from one four-bay facility. We're putting another 12-bay facility right beside it. Somebody's going to move in, maybe Jake's garage, somebody's garage, maybe Sally's garage. It's going to move in right next door to it to do more extensive motor work. So therefore, we're going to have 4 times the emissions. And there are families back here, you know, me and my wife, we're old farts. You know, some of us are old farts in the community, but there are a lot of young families, you know, small children, and they're going to be exposed to the added emissions. It's just not clean. Yeah, I think we should approve a Goodyear, you know, maybe down the road where there's no housing, you know, something right in Louisville, but back to back with our community, it just kills me. And I know I can speak for everyone back here. They express some of the same concerns. And to be honest with you, I'd be into tears right now if I had little kids. As a matter of fact, I'm halfway into tears now because I know there's little kids. I've got little kids living next door to me. So, at any rate, and again, I'm an old fart, so if you'll bear with me 1 second, did I miss anything else? Yeah. Well, my concern is for the safety of the kids that are growing up in this community. So I propose, you know, that we go ahead and approve a location somewhere for Goodyear. And there's plenty of vacant property on 3040, other than another auto facility there that could really, really pollute our air in a major way. And I guess I'll get out of your hair, but.
Thank you for your input, Mr. Ellis.
I have a question for him.
Oh, that and one other point that I did want to make also. That driveway that comes off of 121, or that driveway that they're proposing, people coming off 121 shoot out of there like a rocket. Yeah, I can tell you where the police department of Louisville will be every time you turn around. It's not enough distance. They you know.
Mary Ellen had a question.
Mr. Ellis, can you tell me more about this emissions problem? I'm not sure if I understand, but are you saying that these vehicles are running most of the time?
Well, a lot of times they are running because they're trying to find out what's going on with the vehicle. They'll run them, they'll put them on, you know, test equipment. So they're running,
for an extended period?
So we take a chance on going from 4, you know, to 16.
Okay.
So, is there any more questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you,
I
sir.
hope
Appreciate
y'all
your input.
will really consider all the issues.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak, please come forward, sign in, state your name. Okay, having no one else come forward, the public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, discussion, comments, concerns?
I have a concern of one interest. I think it should be 2 interests. one-way entrances could create a big problem. I just think they should have two entries on it. That's just me.
But the,
I'm just not sure the feasibility of having two entrances on this site. I mean, they can't get one from
the DOT today.
not right away,
yeah.
so this is the only place they could possibly put an entrance.
The extension alley, but it's not, they're not gonna join up to the other alley? That's what I was asking at first. I don't know.
I assume pushing more vehicles back there would cause more of a issue for the neighbors behind them. I don't know, it's tough. This is a tough
Seems
one.
an inappropriate site.
Well, we did hear that there would be no vehicle parking along the back fence in the buffer area.
The intersection is a problem, I think, like Alvin says.
Comments?
I do have a concern about the emissions. If we are to assume that these vehicles are left running for any extended period of time and you've got more than one, having asthma, I can certainly sympathize with that.
So Richard, if this would not pass, does it still go to city council?
Yeah, it does.
That is correct. The P and Z is merely making a recommendation tonight, but if the P and Z does recommend denial, that would, ordinance requires that the only way the city council could approve is with a supermajority vote, a three-fourths vote.
Okay, thank you.
So my issue with the access is that this is gonna be a problem no matter what is here. So this is just a physical restriction for this site. I just don't know if I can consider that as part of this, considering that that is a restriction of this piece of property, no matter what is going here. We're gonna have to make some concessions on the entry. I do agree with Mary Ellen, though, that the emissions are something that I would worry about as well. Is there any way that they can address how often the cars run and?
Yeah, the applicant can address any of the issues, particularly the emissions issue, if you like.
Can we talk about that a little bit more?
Sure, I'd like to get Mr. O'Bannon up here, who owns the business, and he can talk about that.
Okay.
Yes, as was mentioned earlier, we certainly do maintenance on vehicles at the site. We're a tire and auto service facility. We're licensed by the state to do emissions testing on vehicles. As you know, because you get your cars inspected, part of that is to make sure that cars are running within acceptable amounts of emissions. We deal with that issue all the time, and we believe that part of the service we provide to the community is to help get polluting vehicles off the street or get them repaired, as opposed to causing a specific problem in that regard. So our approach is a little bit different in that sense. In reality, the number of vehicles that we would be working on to that degree is a minor portion of the total traffic that we deal with. Most of the vehicles we deal with are oil changes and tires, rotate and balance, those kinds of things, brake jobs, that kind of thing. We're all blessed to be in a time where our vehicles are a lot more reliable, and with the sensors and the technology they have, we just don't have the polluting nature of our vehicles the way we used to. Oddly enough, we have an increasing number of vehicles come that are hybrids, and so it's a moot point for the most part. So That's how we perceive that. We're sensitive to it because we're in the industry to help improve air quality, not deteriorate it. And so we're delighted to be a part of solving that problem for the community.
So how many employees do you have today?
Well, it's like which day. We like any other small employer, there's turnover involved. Right now at that facility, there's, on any given day, probably 8 people, 9 maybe, depending on days off and the scheduling and that kind of thing. As someone pointed out, I think earlier, our current facility that we lease is 6 bays, and actually there's a 7th that originally was converted into a service bay. But there are 6 operational bays there today and have been since it was put in 1985.
And the new facility will have how many bays?
6 operating in the new facility will have 12.
Okay.
6 on either side. I have to give you a little bit of personal input since I have an opportunity. The original arrangement of the store was our desire. We would like to have had the facility, frankly, with the bays opening north and south. Our reasoning behind that had to do with a better operating and work environment for our employees. Right now, the facility we have is not very conducive to employee working conditions, and it's because there's no opening and there's no airflow. And in the mornings, in the summer, it gets hot. In the afternoons, it gets hotter. So we deal with an environmental issue with the way it's constructed now, and our desire was to rotate it 90 degrees so that we would get the prevailing southern flow winds through. However, we've gotten comfortable with the rotation the way it is now and the way the recommendation is, and we're asking your approval for, because we realize that the additional length of the building, and the doors are open all the time anyway, there's going to be enough airflow of other types. It didn't have to be just a north-south, that we're comfortable with the arrangement the way it is now.
So you said you only have 6 bays right now?
Yes, sir.
And you also said the business have expanded at this time?
Yeah, this store, pardon me, I don't know how familiar you folks are with it. It's been there for, again, all of these years, been owned by 5 different individuals, and it's had a very cyclic kind of pattern in terms of its business. At one time, the original occupier of it not only did auto tires and auto service, but they also did U-Haul rentals out of it. So I'm sitting here thinking, this is kind of interesting, because without question, there was equipment stored there at one time. But we're not proposing and we're not going that way, and that's not our business. It was a different business model that they had. So at the time, the car count and the traffic was very high, and then there was a change in ownership, and it kind of deteriorated down to where maybe there would be 12 or 15 customers a day is all.
So other words, you're saying that your business have extended, so those cars that be parked there, there's quite a few cars that park after hours.
Yes, sir. During the day, while we're working, they're in and out.
In and out. I mean, after hours too now, because there's a fitness center right next door. And there are some cars that y'all do leave outside the bay, because
we have, again, we battle this constantly, folks, whether it's here in Louisville or in our other locations. It's never to our advantage to have a customer's vehicle left over and outside, because we're liable for anything that happens to that vehicle while it's in our possession. So we do everything possible to get all vehicles either picked up or certainly pulled in every day. Now, as was pointed out, this is a strip center, this is a shopping center, and vehicles come and go that we don't know about until the next day. And sometimes they'll get dropped off. That's not as common as it used to be, but it still happens from time to time.
But under the new concept and the new lot, there won't be any connection between the shopping
Correct.
center. Okay.
Correct. By the way, back to the parking issue, if we have our own facility and we have certainly more control over it. We're comfortable with the restrictions that have been asked for in terms of the parking and all of that. And obviously, we have arrangements with towing companies, so if vehicles are abandoned, we call and get them hauled. And that's the reason these that are at the back, I'm pretty sure are either employee vehicles or someone else's vehicles. We have neighbors leave cars on our lot, oddly enough, so. Any other questions?
Okay. Anything else? Thank you, sir. I had a question for Richard. It really doesn't pertain to theirs, but if someone moves into the existing location, do they need an SUP? Do they need anything, or they can just open up business tomorrow?
It depends on the timing. That facility can continue as a minor automotive repair business if there is if the operation does not cease for more than 90 days. So 90 days is the critical point. If that facility goes vacant and there's no operation of the automotive repair for 90 days, then an SUP would be required for anyone to reoccupy with an automotive repair business.
Then we can put the restrictions on that location.
Then it would be a whole new day, and it would be subject to staff review and have to go through the public hearing process before the P&Z and the city council. There's one other thing I would like to add. Staff does have a concern with the storage of tires outside. The local commercial district does not allow any outside storage, which is what the current facility is zoned. And as part of this SUP, staff would recommend that if this is recommended for approval, that a third condition be added stating that the outside storage of tires or other materials shall not be allowed on this site. Like I said, our current ordinances do not, like I said, do not allow any type of outside, and storing tires is considered outside storage, and we do not feel that that would be appropriate at this location.
Okay. Sir, yes. Sure.
I guess, Charles, something that may be interesting to know is, out of all the service work they do, how much of it involves a car sitting there running for any period of time. So I don't know if you could give some ballpark figures on that. But, I mean, you can imagine, go to any car repair place, most of the cars are not running. And I would like to point out that this site is zoned for a fast food use without an SUP. And that's, if you've been by Chick-fil-A at lunchtime with all those cars sitting in the drive-through running, we'd be talking exponentially more than this operation may generate while the cars are running for a short period of time while being tested or going through the state inspection process.
Okay.
Thank you.
I overlooked the question of tire disposal. Like I mentioned with regard to other environmental issues, our industry is pretty heavily regulated. Matter of fact, it's very heavily regulated. And we are obligated under severe penalty of how we dispose of tires. The tires are disposed of by a licensed recycler that comes every 10 days or 2 weeks currently and picks those tires up and takes them for either repurposing through grinding them up or otherwise disposing of them properly. Now, that being said, most of the old and by the way, most of our facilities are facilities old in the sense they were built in the 60s or 70s or 80s. At that time, these requirements, I suppose, didn't exist because they all have outside storage areas. But I appreciate the fact that we're going in a different direction here, and so we can contain those used, take-off, stored vehicles, the scrap tires, inside the facility, because they come and pick them up anyway every 10 days or so. So I didn't make that point a while ago with respect to tires.
Okay, thanks for that input.
I don't want to be another part of the barrage. I see the barrage coming, and it'll continue to come. the facility right now allows water to seep in to the existing tires. It doesn't take 10 days for mosquitoes to form. They can form in like, what, 2 or 3 days, something of that nature. We're talking, 3 times the volume in tires now, or 4 times the volume. And so that concerns me. And again, the emissions is something that really, really concerns me, deeply concerns me, because of all the kids that we have in the community.
Okay.
And, he brought up the reason why I said barrage is, this other gentleman brought up, it's not like, like you go to a Wendy's or a whatever, and there's gonna be more emissions right there. Well, yes, but there's not a Wendy's in my backyard. There's probably not a Wendy's in any of your backyards.
Okay, thank you. All right, having no one else come forward, the public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, discussions, comments, concerns, or a vote?
I mean, this one's definitely a tough one with the single entry. We also have to think about, I guess, the growth of Louisville and how we're growing. If we don't approve the SUP, more than likely they'll move out, and probably a less reputable neighbor may move in. So this may still operate as a facility. I like the plan, but we have to consider the neighbors as well. So it's a tough call.
I think the applicant has expressed about the back wall and maybe doing
I
a little
agree.
more
They've done a
for
lot,
noise
yes.
abatement, and also being able to house the tires in an enclosure that's not outdoors, even though it may be, well, that's the question. It could be detached from the building, but if it's still enclosed, does it meet the qualifications, Richard? Like today, they're in the enclosure, and if you looked at one of the pictures, you could see them from the top.
Right, I think the intention is that it be inside of a building, outside storage,
Is anything outside the
Okay.
structure?
still outside storage, even if
Okay.
it's in a dumpster enclosure, that's still
Inside
considered
just
outside
one
storage.
facility then?
The primary purpose of the dumpster enclosure is to house the dumpster, not any other materials or storage.
Okay, so that eliminates the mosquito issue as far as water and tires.
Staff would encourage the current owner to
Comply with
come up
that
with
also.
another system of storing those tires, because that the current zoning of local commercial does not allow those tires to be stored inside of that dumpster enclosure. I think that's just something that, code enforcement staff has not noticed.
Okay, and you'll bring that to light? Okay. Okay. Other discussion? All right. I'm looking for a motion, either a motion to recommend approval or a motion to deny approval. And if we have no motion, what do we do?
I make a motion to table it. Can we table it? Or do it have to go to the city council?
It will ultimately have to go to the city council. If you are wishing to have additional information, staff would recommend that you reopen the public hearing and continue the public hearing to a date certain, which could be like your next meeting. And that would allow additional discussion with the neighbors. They'd have another chance to speak if they wish.
We would have to do an affirmative vote either way to send to city council, correct? We'd have to do an affirmative vote for the city council either way it'd have to be a motion to approve.
That is correct. And that is the purpose of this commission, is to ultimately make a recommendation to the council.
I'm not really in favor of tabling or
Yeah, I don't think so either.
reopening the public hearing. I think those who wanted to speak have done so.
Well, I'll make the motion to approve, and we can just vote on it.
With the third,
With the 3 conditions recommended by staff?
With a motion to approve with 3 conditions recommended by staff.
okay.
I need a second.
Motion by Brandon. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mary Ellen. Okay, those in favor signify aye.
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 Okay, that is,
You want to do a hand count?
that's
No.
Okay. Those opposed?
No.
No? Okay. That would be, how many are there of us today? 6? So it would be 5 approval and 1 non-approved. And so the motion does
Mr. Chairman,
carry.
who was the no vote?
Steve.
Mr. Buck?
It was Mr. Byers. Okay, we had a second? And we,
Yeah, second
and we
Oh,
voted, so, yeah.
from, yeah.
So, okay.
Mr. Chairman, this item will be considered in a second public hearing by the city council on Monday, February the 15th at 7 o'clock PM.
Okay, thank you, Richard. All right, having no other business come before the panel, I need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Alvin, seconded by Brandon. Those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Nay? Okay, motion carries, meeting adjourned.